Warriors Unite! Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 in the 1% Club. I figured I haven't done one for about a week or so, and I'm in the classroom, so I figured I'd take a break and kind of get one out there for you guys. So how you guys doing? Well, hope you guys are conquesting yourselves. Hope you guys are conquesting things around you, and obviously under God's purposes. Once you do that, you become a whole, powerful, different person. And we'll talk about why in a second. Once again, thank you for the comments, feedback, donations. All those things are greatly appreciated. It's great to kind of talk about these topics. I hope you guys are getting something out of this as well. Let's do a couple of shout-outs here before we actually do our topic. Badlmnop, thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. CCT 160, congratulations. Keep it up. Dramios 8841, thank you. Some of these are Modern Ambuk. Ooh, thank you. MK Hole, thank you. Periell Brown, thank you. I think I'm getting a lot of these wrong. Sorry about that. Getriel Homie, thank you. TheoHirsch, thank you. Say, Jordan, I know I got that one wrong. I got that one wrong before. So, Sjoerd. We'll get that right eventually. So, Stuartwagner, thank you, my friend. Giodude, thank you. And Jhamilton, thank you. Jojo Aces, thank you. Jaysoalpha 15 thank you. And Knowledge Harvester, thank you guys very much for your comments, and I appreciate those a great deal, and I'll continue to keep working on trying to get some of those names correct. All right, so let's talk about a topic here. We got a combination of topics. We're going to talk about how does SR, semen retention, how does it protect you from harm? And over the last week or so, I turned 64 yesterday, and it's really an interesting type of thing how I feel so much better now than I did many, many years ago for many years because of this. And this is the only variable that I didn't change in my life. So Knowledge Berakah has a comment about protecting your calmness with semen retention. Also another comment about protecting us from harm. I'm going to kind of combine those a little bit when we talk about this. So I've been studying lately a lot of work from Carl Jung, who's a psychologist way back in the, over 100 years ago, did a lot of work when it came to men, abstinence, and celibacy, and did work on that sexual libido energy that we talk about, trying to transmute that. Now, why is this important? Well, let's kind of look at the premise of this. So in our society, we look at this idea of power and strength that a male has. Now, females have the same thing in some ways, but we're going to focus on males because most people who view this channel are males. So the idea is that we have all this energy. And again, people are made of energy, molecules, atoms, but it comes back down to all that forms an energy source. This is why when we talk about the Fountain of Youth book by Peter Kendler, we talk about chakras, another theory about energy, forces of energy that we have. Now, all that energy ends up being important in a human being. This is what makes a person powerful. If a person keeps their energy for lots of years, they become stronger. They become a strong person. No matter how old they are, they look strong. And you can see this nowadays. You can see a lot of people who are releasing just based on the fact that after a number of years, they become weak. Now, a lot of people may say, well, that's not because of retention, but if you probably examine the situations, my guess would be they've been draining themselves all these years. And Carl Jung kind of talked about this as one of the consequences of releasing all the time for pleasure. Now, you say to yourself, okay, why, Vigor Warrior, why do people do this? They would think that obviously common sense would tell you that if you're sitting there and you have all this energy, you want to keep building this energy up. And that makes perfect sense, right? However, we have a lot of forces working against us in this society. You could talk about this as the the evil one. You could talk about this as being the real world compared to the spiritual world, right? The material world. But everything in the society is really more based on getting you away spiritually from God. And as a result of that, you're focusing more on material things and pleasure. And you're moving away from God, right? Though you have a great amount of pleasure with God, that's not told to people. Most people, unless they're very religious people, don't find it out until they become closer to God. But for the most part, we're told that all the excitement, pleasure, you should go after. And this whole me generation back when I was growing up in the 60s was something that was emphasized. Pleasure yourself. And so you had people running around naked all the time, doing all kinds of drugs and having, group sex, all kinds of stuff running around all the time. And it wasn't a problem. It was actually highlighted and people thought it was great, breaking up the establishment, all kinds of stuff like that. But the thing is that as Carl Jung talks about, this wasn't liberation. This is an enslavement. When you think about this, releasing your energy all the time becomes an addiction. And this is what happens with pornography, and all these other things that we look at. It becomes an addiction. And what you're doing is systematically kind of destroying yourself. You're eliminating yourself. And so the harm, the anxiety, all these heighten when you're releasing all the time. I know I suffered through this for 47 years. So I kind of know my own experiences of what happened. So what ends up happening then is that if you're not holding your energy inside, you're more susceptible to anxiety, to fear, to depression, mental health. I believe that's the case. A lot of this stuff is caused by all this seeking out pleasure, addictions people have that's destroying themselves. And so Carl Jung said this, that a man who's able to hold on to his energy, control himself, all of a sudden becomes more clearer, more precise, more focused, attracts more things in their life, becomes a lot more of a strong person, and they can put into a lot of anxiety. They're not fearful. All these things happen because this person is able to now control themselves, and this energy is transmuted through their body. And all of a sudden it becomes a source of strength, and they become stronger and stronger. I feel very strong, unbelievably strong. At 64 years old, I feel great. Strong because I have all that energy built inside of me. I did not feel like this, it was even about 8 years ago, right? I think it's been about 1,700 days since COVID, when I first started doing monk mode and things like that. And, you're at a point where you have a whole different feeling, personality. At that time, I said I had nothing to lose. I was just going to go full blast into this because I felt like there was something to this. And there's a theory. This is why we talk about the 1% Club. Each one of us comes to some idea that eventually this is something that we need to do. And it's been proven through the history of man that the people who are able to control their nature, control their energy, become very famous people. Tesla, and you talk about Tyson, all these people that have had, Muhammad Ali, all these people able to control themselves, not having lust as a main thing in their life, not caring about women, focusing on themselves. They're still attracting all kinds of women, but they don't care about this. They're focusing on using that energy for other kind of goals and things like that. So when we talk about this, we talk about the protecting us from harm. To me, it builds a shield. It builds like a suit of armor around a person that they can't get caught up as much. Sickness, I don't even know what that is half the time. Cold, maybe sniffle here and there. But basically, it's because you have this force around you, that inside of you now, that's protecting you. I felt now, as the years gone on, I felt like I wasted a lot of years because I released, and it was almost like I felt like I was half a person. And there's times it happens, and the more you do it, the more addicted you get to it. That short release, and all of a sudden now you're feeling terrible about it. And that's what ended up happening to me. That's kind of why I ended up making that change. And obviously, I was doing a lot of the stuff with Fountain of Youth, and it was making some effort, but it was something more. And the sixth right within that calendar talks about is the one of sexual transmutation. And Napoleon Hill in his book Think and Grow Rich talk about it. Carl Jung talks about it. Sex is a key. The sexual energy is a key. And if you can learn to control that energy, then all of a sudden you have a different way of looking at things, right? You're not looking at things the same way. And so when you focus on this, you're focusing really on trying to say, okay, this is something that's important. And when I focus on this calmness, the same type of thing. You're being calm, you're relaxed, right? You're focusing on being relaxed. It's not something that you can do. I'm gonna move myself over a little bit here. But it's something you're focusing on because you realize that this power is unbelievable. Your power inside of you is unbelievable. And because of that power that's unbelievable, you're now focusing on things outside that make you stronger. And so those things outside don't bother you as much, and you become a stronger person. So when we talk about this whole thing, and I think Knowledge Berakah has a good question here about this, your calmness comes from the fact that you're able to control all that energy. The people who are releasing all the time, it's almost like a systematic type of thing. They're releasing, and they're destroying themselves. Now, it takes some time to recognize this, and certainly in our society, we have what we call this blue matrix, in which people are told that they're basically, brainwashed, that it's great health-wise, and it's a great thing to release as much as you can. And we've been told this. Now, in my mind, I think there's been a systematic type of conspiracy in trying to destroy the country from within, destroy people, trying to make them feel like that, they're not powerful, make men become emasculated, and make them weak. And part of that is through pornography, getting them to release all the time so they become weaker. They become more anxious and upset, and they lose their temper more. And they're not strong, right? They're not strong leaders. So with all that happening then is that to me, there's been a big plan to do that. So this is why pornography becomes free. You have to understand. You have to ask yourself why. Why is pornography free on the internet? Well, it's because it's dangerous. People know that they're trying to make people weaker by the foods we have, by the images we see all the time. And so once you realize that's happening, you have to say to yourself, okay, am I going to fall victim of this, or am I going to go ahead and rise above this? And I think the whole key to it is say, I'm going to rise above this to try to make this something that I can become a high-value male, which is what the whole purpose is, trying to become more high-value as you go through. But this is where Jung is talking about the fact that as a person, you cannot allow yourself to be kind of dragged along with temptation, addictions. You have to learn how to control yourself first, and then we can control things outside. So when I say conquesting yourselves within, if you can conquest yourself first, then you conquest things around you more. But this is how we talk about it protects you from harm, because you now have an armor, a headpiece, a sword, all these things within you, because retention provides you that sort of ability. It provides you the ability to be able to say, I can actually go ahead and not get upset about something. Even though a woman is attracted to me, I don't necessarily have to release. I don't actually to be with her. I can just accept it as a flattery and kind of move on. It becomes more of your call. You're not desperate chasing people. You're focusing on yourself. And I think this becomes a very strong type of thing. So it really is important when it comes to being calm and also protecting yourselves, is to say, this is important for me to practice, retention. This has been an age-old type of thing. We talk about it in terms of semen retention, but you could talk about an abstinence, you could talk about celibacy, brahmacharya. All these things have the same component. The main thing is you're using energy, transmuting it within yourself to make yourself achievable, getting goals accomplished, becoming better every day, and you're not focusing on women. You're not focusing on trying to sleep with women. You're not trying to focus on releasing all these things that they tell you should be doing to become healthy, right? Or to become important, like the old, the Rat Pack group. This is sleeping with all the, Will Chamberlain sleeping with 1,000 people. All these things are supposed to be big types of deals. Well, when you look at this, you have people who are slowly destroying themselves. And why do I say that? When you look at people, you can look at the draining. Look at a lot of the case studies over the years when people became weaker and weaker because they released all the time. Now, that may not come out, but exactly. But the idea is that when you're talking about releasing, you become less strong. So wouldn't it surprise me that you're having heart attacks and all that kinds of stuff because of that COVID even? It makes your body weaker. You're not strong enough. And because of that, then you become, easily, accessible to any kind of disease you have. But if you have strength and you continue to keep this within your body, it just makes perfect sense. I mean, if you have a strong enough sperm system to be able to have children and procreate, which is what you should be doing, using it for, right? If you kept that within yourself, can you imagine how strong you'd be? And that's a good question to kind of look at. So I like the question. I think it's important to kind of look at. And again, as we examine this topic again, it's important to realize, warriors, that you have a lot more power than you think you do. The power resonates within you. But you can't be throwing that power away all the time. You can't be saying, okay, I'm going to release this picture, I'm going to release to her, I'm going to do that. Because what you're doing is systematically draining yourself. And when you're younger, and I remember I went through this, when you're younger, it's easy to say, okay, well, I have plenty of energy, I can always regain it. And when you're younger, you seem that way. You almost seem like you're invulnerable. But as time goes on, you realize this becomes an addiction, and you can't stop yourself. And now you're losing yourself, and all of a sudden you're losing a lot of your energy. You become feeble and weak. And I see this happening all the time with people in their 50s who should be, being vital. That's why we talk at Vigor Warriors, right? You have to be vigorous. Vigor, vitality, all these things, no matter what age you're in, you should be able to be vigorous. Why? How do you do that? Well, it starts by keeping all the energy you have. And then you use your energy to weight lift, to exercise, to run, walk, whatever you do. And then you eat the right foods, and you just continue maintaining it. You have goals, you're achieving things and doing things. I mean, for Vigor Warriors wife, I'm putting a pool together. I built a pool out, helped build a pool with my son, and putting sod out there, 100-degree weather out here in the area I'm at. And you're focusing on all kinds of things. You could be saying, oh, I'd be better sitting at home and watching video games, doing stuff. But no, you keep doing things because that's the nature of people. We're doing things in God's purposes. And I think it's important to kind of keep doing that. Just staying the deck yesterday. So I think it's important to kind of look at this and say, okay, what am I trying to achieve here? As a high value male, you're trying to achieve the most you can achieve. Be a strong person for God and work in His purpose. And a big part of that is not throwing away energy He's given to you every day. So, all right, hope this helps, guys. Thank you, Knowledge Berakah. I appreciate that. And like I said, I'll try to do one a little bit sooner this next week coming up. But hopefully I get a lot of that yard work done and focusing on finishing up the summer semester here. So God bless you guys all the time, and I always leave you guys with two things. First of all, every day is a great day to a great warrior, a new warrior I was going to say, but a great day. A new day to a great warrior. That's right, I say it this way. And secondly, my friends, always continue to remember, we're battling every day. We're battling the devil, we're battling all kinds of stuff to be able to say, we're not really going to go ahead and fall for a temptation. So we always have to continue to battle on! God bless you guys and have a great day.